Alright guys, welcome back to Frugal Homestead. So today I wanted to talk to you guys and catch up with our blackberries, our catata berries, and our raspberries. So many people don't seem to understand how easy it is to take care of these plants. I've done multiple videos about this and I keep getting these questions. So I want to just touch on some things that'll make it way easier for you to produce giant, great tasting berries without having to pay a dime. So let's get into it. So Apollo has decided to join us in the video today. Ain't that right, buddy? So the first picking of the raspberries is done, but look at these plants, guys. Now every year we hack these things off to about 2 or 3 foot right before winter hits, cut all the dead canes out, and then end up putting about 2 to 3 inches of compost in the bottom. And then in the spring, we throw in another 2 to 3 inches of compost. We don't sift it, it's just raw and tough compost. Now, as you can see, we don't do a lot of weeding either. So a lot of these need to be pulled out. But if you go over here and start looking at these blackberries, which are just starting to turn, they are all over the place. They are breaking the branches down because they are so heavy with berry production. And they're good looking berries too. Now, they haven't been getting much water because we don't water ours. By adding the compost, it holds the moisture better when it does rain. Now, everybody wants to go push these plants so hard with all these chemical fertilizers, and usually it's really hard to get the numbers correct on the amount of fertilizer to use. Some people use a slow release, which doesn't time correctly. All you got to do is put some compost in there. Work on pulling out anything that doesn't belong in your bed, like these tree of heaven or whatever they're called, and just go ahead and let them go. Now, Apollo boy here, these are his berries because he will actually put them in his mouth and squeeze with his tongue, and when he catches one that's done, he chomps it up, don't you, boy? So now we're on the outside of the fence, and as you can see, we get a lot of shade this time of day. The deer have been coming up and breaking the branches off, but we still have plenty of berry production on this side. And if you look down here, you can see how we just mound up the compost and toss it in. But if you dig down, there's still plenty of moisture down there because it holds it in. If you're not adding fresh plant matter into your beds, the dirt will just harden up and it won't actually hold the water, it just dumps through it. Now, we had a big plant here, but this fall a deer came and ripped the whole thing out, like the whole plant. I don't know what its problem was. It was a very young deer, but the good news is they will break off and come back new plants all by themselves. So you just let it fill this hole in by itself. As you can see, it's already starting to do it. So we'll just let this fill back in by itself. But I want you guys to see this because there really is not that much to it. I mean, I pull down here, look at how wet that is and how nice that soil is. That's just compost. And I think saying that these are growing good is downplaying it, because I'm 6'1", guys. Look at those. It's higher than I can reach. I think our raspberry plants are doing just fine. Now, what if I told you I don't use anything in these other than compost? Our compost is very simply built. It's coffee grounds, wood chips, grass shavings, grass cuttings from our bagging mower, and manure if it's available, but I don't stress over that. I also have not been turning it as much because I just let it sit for a year. Now, I'm going to take you over to where we had a little compost pile built this year, so you can see how little compost it took to do all 3 of these giant beds plus the catata berries. All right, so this was a little experiment we did where we put some PVC inside of a compost pile. So really it didn't even have a full pile, but it was a piece of fencing that was made in a circle on a 4-foot pallet, and it was about 3 foot high. It ended up being about 2 foot high by the time we were done. And it did all 3 of those beds, the catata bed, and then we threw a little bit here around this grape plant, flowers, more grapes. So we just tossed a little bit on here just to help feed them a little. And this place gets very little sun and everything still does well. Granted, the grapes don't grow that big because they're in the shade all the time. But it was just a place to plant them and it never got transplanted again. All right, I do want to mention the downfall of not using chemicals. And that's that the berries taste way sweeter. And then all the animals are going to come try to strip your plants. I mean, you can just look at that and see how much we've been stripped. They've actually ripped the entire plants out of the ground. The deer have just been annihilated. Look at how they've been coming in and just eating the ends off to get these bunches of berries because they taste so good. Now these plants will recover, but honestly, if you're gonna have these plants out in the middle of the field like this, you better have a fence around them because the deer will come get them. But all we did, same thing, compost in the bed. This is dried out, but if you come over here, that's all wet. All right, so this mess is just the compost chilling. I used to do all kinds of turning and all kinds of stuff, and you want to know what I realized? None of that matters. Just put the stuff in the bins, or in this case, in the pile, and don't worry about it. Now I got a neighbor with tractors down there. My dad's tractor comes over sometimes. He's got one of the little ones, and they'll just roll this over for me. This is literally nothing but wood chips, grass clippings, and then I pour coffee on top of it whenever I get a chance. They'll roll it over and turn it into some of the best compost you ever seen. Now here's another pile that we just piled as compost. And if you dig into it here, because the top's dry, but get down into it here, and it's absolutely gold. So when we're doing these pile methods, I literally do nothing but just throw it up there. There's a pile we take from. This giant pile will be the next one back. I can take from these at any time because they're actually already ready under here. When you go in and dig into them, I mean, that's already done. That's ready, see? It just holds into a ball, breaks up, smells amazing, and it's perfect. It's ready to go. Now this is the newest, so this is older, and this is very old. And you'll see that they're each a little bit lower, especially on the outsides. Now this is where I throw the bigger material and then throw cuttings on top. This is long-term breakdown, and there's a lot of worms down in there, and you can see by the edges how good stuff grows along this edge from the leaching of the compost out. It's almost like a compost tea every time it rains. Now I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it, but this is the easiest way to do it. I've come to the conclusion that you don't need chemicals, you don't need pest control other than fences for the deers being a pest. But generally speaking, this is all you need because this is going to help you hold moisture, because we all know every year it's getting hotter now. We can't argue that. And there's less rainfall every year if you really calculate it. So having it so you A, fertilize without burning your plants, and B, hold moisture, that's just two benefits to compost on your berries. And if you give your berries these things, they will go nuts. And if you got grandkids or kids like mine, they will tear up them berries. There will be no shortage. Plenty of people to eat them, plenty of people you can give them away to. We let neighbors come pick them sometimes. It's so worth it to grow them, and they're so easy. Now this mess is called our split off bed, and you'll see that there's even some raspberries left on it here. But this is literally just to pop out plants and give them away. Paulo, do you want a raspberry? Do you want a raspberry? Good boy. Is that good? So I'll come down and pick these and give them to Apollo. Here you go, buddy. Good boy. And he'll eat some, but I'll go to the edge and I just start cutting plants away. And then I give them to people and they can have their own raspberries. And they kind of appreciate it. And this bed doesn't have to be really well kept. I just walk through, like I said, pick a few. These raspberries do come twice a year. They come out twice a year. Hey buddy, hey, you want some more? Nope. But they come out twice a year, so that little bed is perfect for just giving them away. We do have to thin our other beds up top because, as you saw, they grow too fast, but no one's going to complain about that. Now, when you look at how big these raspberry plants have gotten, it's undeniable that they're doing good. But we have one plant here with grapes, and they get fed very well off of the compost. Now, this plant is not of a great variety. I don't remember where we got it, but it was a really cheap plant we bought for like $3 somewhere. And it doesn't grow the best berries. It doesn't have the best genetic breeding. The volume's there, but I think it just needs a few more years. And it also should get cut back a little more in the beginning of the season to focus more on the berries and less on leaf production. But we have done some recipes using these leaves, but it's the same thing. The compost just makes it go nuts. All these plants are just full of compost down here that holds the moisture in as it rains, and they grow. So to anyone that's watched our older videos that we talk about just doing a basic cut back in the winter and composting in for the winter, it also insulates your plants from freezing. It really does help, and it's easy. It costs nothing, and you probably are done in about an hour depending upon how much bed space you have. So I definitely think it's worthwhile to just basically do compost. Now, if you have chemical berries in the ground now, where you're chemically fertilizing it, you must understand that if you start this method, it probably will take a full year of bad crops before you start getting good crops. Your plants have to learn not to rely on the fertilizer that's chemical uptake. All right, it has to learn to adapt and change to use something else. Now, there also is some places where chemicals have been used so long that levels are so high, it takes 2 or 3 seasons to get rid of it. So everybody's situation is going to be different. Sometimes it's better just to pull out the dirt, get some new clean dirt, mix it with some compost, and make new beds. Depends on your situation, depends on how much you got to do. It may be easy or it may be hard. It just depends. But the sooner you get going on it, the sooner it will be easier for you. Because I think Missy spent about an hour this year doing this bed, and I just run back through and do some cutoffs, you know, when I'm out mowing the grass, pull weeds, whatever. We don't invest any real time in it, but the joy we get by holding our grandkids, coming out here picking them, where we don't even really get to bring that many in the bowl because the kids eat them as fast as we pick them. It's really a good time, and I think you would enjoy it just as much as we do. So with that said, if you haven't already, go down, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you see all of our upcoming videos. Let us know what kind of variety of berries you grow, and if you use this kind of method or even on other plants. We'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next one. You ready to go inside? You look kind of hot there, buddy. You want to say goodbye? Let's go inside, get you in the air conditioning.